What is justice? In my last video, I showed that Jesus' call to love created a significant difference between the Greek ideal of justice and God's justice. But is love a kindness which is undeserved, a favor which is unearned, all there is to biblical justice? In this video, I'll show why love alone can't be the center of God's scale of justice, because justice is also characterized by judgment. Now, judgment can be a scary word because in our culture, it's almost always used in a negative way. But if you've ever been angry at an instance of racial bigotry or upset by laws that discriminate against women or the poor, then you have a natural sense of what biblical judgment is all about. Let's look at a few examples. In the Psalms, we're reminded that Yahweh himself watches over the sojourners, or in our terms today, the migrant. He upholds the widow and the fatherless, and ultimately God will judge the way of the wicked by bringing them to ruin. And if God is a God of judgment, then we must follow Yahweh's example and give justice to the weak and to the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. The prophet Isaiah reinforces this truth and reminds God's people that their faith must be put into action. Yahweh wants them to learn to do good and to seek justice. Don't just sit on the sidelines, but correct oppression when you see it. Bring justice to the fatherless and plead the widow's cause. James, the brother of Jesus, taught this same Old Testament truth to the early church. He said that faith is both hearing the word of God and doing the word of God. So, for example, Christians must not give preference to the rich over the poor, because this is a contradiction of their professed faith in the lordship of Jesus Christ and conceals the very glory of God. Finally, the Apostle Paul reminds the church that if a fellow believer is caught in any act of wrongdoing, then those who are spiritual must not sit back and watch or celebrate their sin. Instead, we must judge what is wrong, restore our brother or sister with a spirit of gentleness, and at the same time make sure that we don't fall into our own sin. Now, these 4 verses offer just a small sampling of the hundreds of biblical passages that teach God's people to confront injustice and promote justice in the world. We must judge or discern between right and wrong, good and bad. We must judge as evil things such as oppression of the weak, abuse of the powerless, attacks on the rights of others, and the celebration of wickedness. Now, given God's call to confront evil and transform culture, is it fair to conclude that judgment, not love, sits at the center of God's scale of justice? If you say yes, then we are left with 2 seemingly contradictory methods of doing biblical justice, 2 very different ways of confronting evil. Should Christians love the evildoer and offer a kindness they did not deserve? Should we offer the oppressor the favor of God they did not earn? Or should Christians judge the evildoer and turn them over to the natural consequences of their sin, which they deserve? Shouldn't we fairly judge the oppressor's evil and correct the wrong they have done? The contrast between these 2 approaches to justice, love versus judgment, brings us back to our original question: what is justice? In my next video, I'll offer a solution, but for now, let's try to discover the answer through these deeper questions. For many, judgment has a purely negative meaning, but given these biblical verses, what role does judgment play in stopping evil? Given these definitions of love and judgment, why is love alone not enough to counter injustice and bring justice? What do you think sits at the balance point of God's scale of justice? Is it love? Is it justice? Or is it something else?